20th century, an era defined by the splitting of the atom, the rise of psychoanalysis, and the relentless march of industrial warfare. It was a time when humanity looked to the skies and saw not angels, but airplanes, not heavens, but the cold vacuum of space. Science had promised to illuminate the dark corners of the world, banishing superstition with the harsh light of reason. Yet, precisely in this age of skepticism, the inexplicable pushed back. In the remote hills of Italy and the quiet convents of Poland, events were unfolding that would baffle the greatest medical minds and theologians alike. Two figures emerged from the shadows of obscurity to challenge the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual. Padre Pio, the Capuchin friar who bore the wounds of Christ, the stigmata, under the microscope of modern medicine, and Faustina Kowalska, the humble nun whose psychological interiority birthed a global movement of divine mercy. Today, we delve into the mystery. We examine the medical reports, the psychological evaluations, and the spiritual legacies of two modern mystics. This is the story of the blood, the visions, and the science of miracles. 1918. The world was bleeding from the Great War. In a small, desolate friary in San Giovanni Rotondo, a 31-year-old friar named Francesco Fergiani, known to the world as Padre Pio, was fighting his own silent battle. It was the morning of September 20th. Pio was alone in the choir loft. He described a figure appearing before him, a mysterious person whose hands, feet, and side were dripping blood. When the vision ceased, Pio found himself marked. The stigmata, the wounds of the crucifixion, had appeared on his body. But this was not the Middle Ages. This was the 20th century. The Church, cautious and skeptical of hysteria, did not immediately declare a miracle. Instead, they sent for the doctors. Enter Dr. Luigi Romanelli, head physician of the hospital in Barletta. He was the first scientist to examine the wounds. He arrived expecting to find self-inflicted injuries, perhaps caused by acid or iodine, a common fraud among those seeking attention. What he found disturbed him. The wounds were fresh, bleeding, and yet they did not infect. They did not heal, nor did they worsen. For a man who wore wool gloves and lived in an era before antibiotics, the absence of gangrene or infection in open, decades-long wounds was medically baffling. Then came the Vatican's heavy hitter, Dr. Amico Bignami, a pathologist and a professed atheist. Bignami was convinced this was psychosomatic, a case of neurotic necrosis, or perhaps self-mutilation using tincture of iodine. He ordered the wounds to be sealed and bandaged under strict surveillance for 8 days, believing that without renewal by the friar, they would heal. 8 days passed. The seals were broken, the bandages removed. The wounds were not only unhealed, they were bleeding as profusely as ever. The iodine theory collapsed. Science had observed the phenomenon, but it could not explain the cause. For 50 years, Padre Pio bore these wounds. He lost approximately a cup of blood a day. By all medical logic, he should have been anemic, weak, unable to function. Yet, he worked 15 to 19 hours a day, hearing confessions, building a hospital, and counseling thousands. Here lies the paradox of Padre Pio. He was a mystic, yes, but he was deeply grounded in reality. He used his fame and the donations that poured in not to build a golden temple, but a state-of-the-art hospital. He brought the best medical equipment of the 1950s to a remote Italian mountain. He respected science, even as his own body defied it. While Padre Pio's mystery was written on his skin, in Poland, another mystery was unfolding within the mind. Sister Maria Faustina Kowalska, a barely educated nun, was recording a dialogue that would change the theology of the 20th century. In the 1930s, psychology was dominating the intellectual landscape. Freud and Jung were mapping the unconscious. Religious visions were often dismissed as hysteria or schizophrenia. Faustina's confessors were no exception. They frequently sent her for psychiatric evaluation. She was examined by Dr. Maciejewska. The diagnosis: Sister Faustina was perfectly sane. There were no signs of neurosis, no hysteria. Her mind was clear, her logic sound. Yet, she claimed to speak with Jesus Christ regularly. The science of Faustina's miracle is not in blood, but in the impossible accuracy of her intuition. She wrote about the Feast of Mercy and specific theological nuances that were far above her educational level. She described a future where her message would be banned by the Church, and then accepted a prophecy that came true to the letter when the Vatican forbade the devotion in 1959, only to lift the ban in 1978. Modern researchers have overlaid the face of the original Divine Mercy painting, painted under Faustina's strict direction, with the face on the Shroud of Turin. The anatomical proportions, the spacing of the eyes, the nose, the structure of the face, they align with a precision that defies coincidence. How could a simple nun and a local artist in 1934 recreate the facial geometry of a relic that wouldn't be fully analyzed by computers until decades later? Padre Pio and St. Faustina never met. Yet, their lives are intertwined. It is said that Padre Pio, with his gift of prophecy, knew of the Polish nun's work. When a young Karol Wojtyla, the future Pope John Paul II, wrote to Padre Pio asking for prayers for a woman with terminal throat cancer, Dr. Wanda Poltowska, Pio said, "To this one, I cannot say no." The woman was healed. Instantly, medically inexplicable. This miracle, facilitated by the future Pope and the Italian mystic, bridges the gap between these two worlds. John Paul II would later be the one to canonize Faustina and champion her message. Mysticism in the modern age is not about the rejection of science. It is about the encounter with a reality that science can observe, but not fully contain. The blood of San Giovanni and the visions of Krakow stand as testaments to a universe that is stranger, deeper, and more beautiful than materialist philosophy allows. In the end, the miracle is not just the suspension of natural laws. It is the transformation of the human heart. And perhaps that is the greatest science of all.